What did God mean when he told Isaiah, "Go and tell this people, be ever hearing but never understanding, be ever seeing but never perceiving. Make the hearts of these people calloused, deafen their ears and close their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed." If you want to see part 2 of this podcast and other premium content likely to be censored by big tech, then consider getting a membership on my site. It's just £5 a month, less than the price of a pint, to support independent content creators like myself to bring you the truth. If you sign up today, you'll get a 7-day free trial. Link in the description, or go to lawrenceeasman.com. Joining me today for another action-packed episode of Eyes Wide Open is Hrvoje Moric. Hrvoje is a Geneva School of Diplomacy graduate, former professor of international relations, proud Croatian American Mexican, founder of the fantastic Geopolitics Empire Podcast, and host of the Hrvoje Moric Show on TNT Radio. In part 1, we discussed the problems we face across the West, the digital gulag that's being erected, the fallout from COVID, and why a political solution seems hopeless. In part 2, for members of my site, we talk about how we can avoid the tyrants of state by utilizing internationalism, flag theory, and digital nomadism. We talk about the value of second passports, residency, offshore structures, and much more, which you sure don't want to miss. Now, it's time for our guest. Hrvoje Moric, welcome to Eyes Wide Open. Appreciate you coming on.
It's great to be on your program. I was listening to your last interview with my colleague from TNT, Darren, and very much enjoyed it. I love what you're doing.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I love your podcast. Your podcast is great, and you have some really, really cool guests, some high-level, highbrow, some people deep within the system, and it's always deeply insightful. And it was a coincidence that I was able to book you for my show just after Darren. So I've had 2 TNT radio hosts back to back. That's a brilliant angle as well, which the TNT radio seems to be giving a platform to a lot of cool people like yourself and Darren and Katie Hopkins. I know she's kind of making a name for herself on there at the moment, but I'm so happy you came on because we kind of have similar interests and we have a similar podcast. And we kind of talk to people who are trying to expose what's going on in the world from a geopolitical level to medical tyranny to financial corruption that we're seeing across the world. And I kind of wanted to chat to you about the things that are turning you on as a host of such a podcast, because we chatted about this a little bit earlier, is that when we do things like our podcasts, we get to speak to a lot of people who have lots of opinions and they are well researched in their topics, and we can oscillate from one end of the spectrum to the other, and it helps to formulate your worldview, but it can also be confusing a little bit sometimes too, because you've got a lot of competing information which can be persuasive in its own right. So trying to forge your own ideas and your own path when you host a podcast like Geopolitics and Empire can be quite a challenge, I guess. So where are you at right now in terms of how you view what's going on in this crazy experience we call the world?
Well, it's just like it's almost like on autopilot, just kind of cruising along. And as you say, talking to so many people, and there are many things that go on. They kind of they help make sure I'm not crazy. You keep each other in check. So each of us develops our own sort of thesis or hypothesis on what's going on, what we should do for how individually we should react, each in our own way where we are. And so talking to some people, it's like playing devil's advocate all the time. And sometimes I may agree or not. Like my last interview I just posted yesterday was the nomad capitalist, Andrew Henderson. And, he believes that there will always be somewhere to escape to. And that's kind of, before you may have heard me mention that I think there's going to be nowhere to run. then he kind of makes you think, because he works
That's his
in
business
that industry.
model, though, isn't it, as well?
Right, but I guess he has to say that as well. So
Yeah.
I just think again, my biggest thing is I saw an article today from AP on Russia, cyber gulag, right? So I call it the algorithm ghetto. I've been calling it the algorithm gulag. I like cyber gulag as well, and I mean that's sort of my main focus. We must keep an eye out on the military, the World War stuff. But again, always my biggest concern is the way that they will be able to control us the most, which is this these digital controls. And I mean, we may have touched on this before, but they will, that will be a way where that's all encompassing to control us at a individual level in every single nation. So that's still my focus, but I'm kind of not as freaked out. I am black-pilled, but I'm just happy and kind of carefree at this point, and just kind of like enjoying life, and whatever happens. And I'm just maybe we'll find ways to deal with whatever is thrown at us.
I'd like to touch upon the digital gulag, because it's definitely like a new era in human containment, if you like, or human control. Because before this dystopian vision that's being presented as part of the 15-minute cities and the digital gulag and the fourth industrial revolution, all of those terms, is that what that's proposing is that we now have digital enforcement of rules, regulations, statutes, oppressive slavery, whatever that may be. We'll have digital enforcement, because right now they can't really enforce much at all. They rely almost completely upon our consent, or manufacturing our consent through psychological manipulation and propaganda, so that they can control huge amounts of people through psychological operations, right? So they don't really need to enforce it as such, because people self-enforce on a large scale. But it seems to be as more and more people wake up and become aware of what the government or those above the government are really doing, enforcement becomes much more difficult as they lose control of populations. So the shift from trying to get people to self-enforce to getting digital enforcement maybe is the solution for the elites to maintain control over large populations. Because the idea that robo-dog, right, or the Boston Dynamics dog that is going to end up being, the street policeman. They don't have to worry about recruitment, training, rebellion. It'll just do as it's told, and it'll enforce it. So I think that's kind of the end game of this dystopian vision, is that all human agency will be reduced to a very small number of dissidents who are still trying to find pockets of freedom around the world. Is that kind of somewhat what your experience is by speaking to people on this topic?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we're switching from analog. As man has lived, whatever the 5,000 years of human history, we've lived in this analog physical space where, as you said, it's been difficult to control us. It's by consent, but also human agents of the state. Whether it's border control or policemen. And as you said, right now, it's difficult for them to control us that way, and so they want to make that switch. And it's interesting. Some of the folks I've been interviewing on TNT recently, that come from the Austrian School of Economics, the Mises crowd, when they look at Mises and Hayek and them, they say that this global technocracy it's unfeasible, in many respects, from a market, capital standpoint. It's unfeasible because you need like a market economy of consumers to be able to build out this thing. But if you kind of, as you mentioned, get rid of them, then you can't build up the structure. So I don't know how they're going to manage that. And you sort of made me think of a quote that I came across the other day, and this is from probably decades ago, but it's a psychotic Yale professor, and the book is called Physical Control of the Mind Toward a Psycho-Civilized Society. And he says we need a program of psychosurgery and political control of our society. The purpose is physical control of the mind. Everyone who deviates from the given norm can be surgically mutilated. The individual may think that the most important reality is his own existence, but this is only his personal point of view. This lacks historical perspective. Man does not have the right to develop his own mind. This kind of liberal orientation has great appeal. We must electrically control the brain. Someday armies and generals will be controlled by electrical stimulation of the brain. And so, I mean, I'm just tracking this daily. I was back home in Chicago, Illinois, a couple of weeks back, and I went to a small VIP event with Colonel Douglas McGregor, who you probably have seen, and I was taking with me Rick Rozoff. He's a 70-year-old fantastic guy. He's got an organization called Stop NATO, and we were just talking all day, and we're taking the tollway in Illinois, which I hadn't done that in probably over a decade. Last time I did that, you could throw in coins, right? To pay for your toll, and now it's gone. It's just digital. So you have to already have the subscription to the transponder, where you're automatically deducted the fee, or I think you go to they give you 2 weeks after the fact to pay online. It's all digital. And then I'm just reading yesterday, like Amazon One. Everything is One now. WHO One Health, Amazon One, and so the Amazon One systems are now deploying where you just pay with your palm. And then this same article from Biometric Update said in China, it's the Amazon equivalent. It's the Chinese Amazon, Tencent. Tencent is rolling out the palm scan at public, train stations and subways, and so you can kind of see them doing this in many places. Just you don't have the option for cash anymore. When I was in LA last month, we went to a restaurant and it said proudly cashless, so you couldn't pay with cash, and just slowly they're cutting those off ramps. And you're not going to have any option to use cash, and then it's just going to be social credit. I mean, you're going to pay with your credit card or your palm, which is linked to your credit card, or your face, which is linked to your credit card, and then that's going to be based on your social score, which they're going to be able to gauge. And then if you just see people getting canceled. Now, I just read like a dozen conservative representatives sent to J.P. Morgan Bank or something like that, saying stop canceling people based on their religious or political views. So, I mean, we're at the heart of this. It's day by day, it's being built out, and I don't see anything stopping it.
No, definitely not. Right now, it just seems like it's a juggernaut that ain't stopping for anyone. And I think they also realize this is their big opportunity. This is the play. They have to make it now and make it quickly before the rest of the world wakes up and pushes back against it once they realize the true nature of the digital prison that they're suggesting we're placed in. And I think that's an important point about when they remove cash, then dissidents, people who speak out, are simply just removed because they can't access the digital system in order to get basic resources. They say, we don't want you, see you later, bye. We're going to be locked out from the game. But then again, who really wants to be in that world? I don't particularly want to be in that world anyway, for them to lock me out. What did Groucho Marx say? I don't want to be a member of any club that would have me as a member. Maybe that's kind of what we're facing here, isn't it? Is who wants to be a part of that? Because it's like Hunger Games. Those who are in the middle of Hunger Games, who wants to be in that crowd? That's not the coolest crowd out there. But yeah, so the electroshock therapy quote that you made there reminded me of, I took my boy to see a film, Jurassic World Dominion, right? And he loves dinosaurs, and I took him to cinema, and maybe I shouldn't, but it was just absolutely chock full. I mean, Klaus Schwab could have wrote the script for that film. It was everywhere. It got that much. I started writing it down on my phone notes because it was so many references in there. But there's one point where they talk about the dinosaurs that they have in the compound, in the digital gulag, where the dinosaurs are kept. And he said, how do you control the dinosaurs? He said, well, we've put electro chips into the brain, and if they misbehave, we just give them an electric shock, right? And that changes their behavior, and that's, stops them what they're doing. Maybe that's what Elon Musk has got planned with
Neuralink. Neuralink, there you go.
Neuralink, yeah. Yeah, so how far down the line do you think we are with the digital gulag? When do you think this dystopian future of the situation where they can lock us out with no cash, how far away is that from being fully implemented, do you think?
I mean, they're all obsessed. We just hear nonstop 2030 from nations across the world. I mean, Elon Musk, I just saw a clip. He's talking about artificial general intelligence. He's coming 2030. You read the Saudi Arabian government's plans, Vision 2030. The UK recently came out and said, we need 10,000 drones by 2030. They're all obsessed with 2030. I don't know what it is. Like, can we know what's gonna happen around the 2030s? Because something's going on there. But I think I try to look at things realistically. I mean, we are already in. It's like the fence has already been built. It's like they're building the fence. There's still some holes here and there, which
I think there'll always be holes, though. There'll always be holes. There'll always be flaws in the digital system, always. And it's just not that good. I don't think it's as smart or as good as they're trying to tell us it is. Because if it's if it's the mediocre bureaucrats who are building it, it's only going to be as good as the guys who are erecting the fence.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very fragile. It goes back to what I was saying earlier there. I mean, I'm just taking stock of my travels and just everything's failing all the time. Every step of the way when I was trying to do the check-in online for my flight recently, error. I couldn't do it because I have multiple citizenships. They changed, so I had to do it in person, and then just every step of the way, renewing my passport, there was an error now. I got to send more documents. Just every step of the way in digital systems. So yeah, I would agree. It's going to be very fragile. But look, if they're already banning people on, the PayPals and freezing terminating bank accounts all over the world, we're already in that system. It's like halfway there, and I had a thought related to that, but it's
coming. Yeah, it's like they want to give us the impression that they are omnipotent, all powerful, that it's pointless to resist because you'll be squashed like a bug, And we saw in COVID, after the initial onslaught, which terrified the populations into compliance, people started to twig onto it, and people started to get more confidence, get more courage, and then a groundswell of resistance, I believe, began to emerge and put the powers that be under immense pressure to keep this scam rolling. And I think in the end, I know some people think, oh no, they stopped it because they wanted to stop it. I think it was largely because, populations were really, really starting to push back because we could see that our freedoms were actually being eroded, not because of some deadly pandemic, but more to do with this political ideology from these elites that they were imposing upon us. And I think that was genuine. I think they took a step back because we pushed them back. So I think it's not as clear cut. Their victory is not as clear cut as they want it to appear. And I think the more we become aware of it and the more we push back, then it's not as much as a foregone conclusion as they'd like to appear. Do you find that as you're speaking to people on your podcast and you're traveling around, do you get a sense that it's it's a talking point amongst people, and that there is a resistance of it's worthwhile.
It's like yes and no. Like I spoke with Robert Blumen recently on my TNT show. He was talking about trust capital and how he thinks the system has lost a lot of this trust capital, right? Kind of what you're discussing. So when they try something like this again, there's going to be more people, like as you explained, that aren't going to go along with it. And then G. Edward Griffin, who I've interviewed and met, he did a great interview this week. Talking about all the stuff we're talking about, and he's also saying like they're steamrolling ahead, and he was saying that we need a critical mass. We don't need everyone. We just need a few percent.
Totally, I agree.
To push back, and I think he said something to the. I think he mentioned like the masses, and it's true. Like they're dumb. I'm not using it in an insulting sense. Like the technical dictionary term, like. They're going along. They're not going to move like donkeys, and it's that small percentage that, if they're effective, we can stave this stuff off or derail it or slow it down. But I'm not under any illusion. My view is that they'll be successful to some extent, making this digital system a mainstay of daily life, and then people like yourself or I will have to. Have one step out of it to survive, and we'll talk about that later. And what that's going to mean, our daily lives are not going to be as comfortable and convenient as they used to be, or as they are now. And we're just going to have to get used to it. And I don't have a problem with that. Getting used to living more old school ways. Maybe I don't have access to some modern appliances I used to, and I have to wash by hand or something. I feel like I don't have a problem with that, and that's just that's the state of it's it's like my grandparents living back in the village in the old days, going through the world wars, and it is what it is. You're living in the time that you're living in, and just adapt, and it's a lot of this is a mental psychological thing, and so
Yeah, it's not none of it ever affected me during COVID. I pretty much did everything I wanted to do, regardless. And in the UK, in England, we still have the common law here, right? And the common law still protects the people to a large degree. And they couldn't force us to wear masks. They couldn't force us to do anything if we just removed our consent and said, "I'm exempt," And that's all I used to do is go around like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Star Wars. These aren't the droids you're looking for. I'd just go, "I'm exempt. I'm exempt." We would just carry on living our life just as normal, Yeah.
Let me just add. I read a point yesterday speaking about the mental health issue. Here in the state of Jalisco in Mexico, it was reported yesterday that now there's been a 300% increase in like mental issues as a result of, they said COVID, but it's not COVID. It's I know you said even here in Mexico they didn't. I still call it. They locked us down. Even though if it wasn't as forceful, but for 3 months you couldn't go out on the street or for a little while, and then they canceled school, and that messed up the kids' minds. They couldn't socialize. You were forced to undergo these protocols to enter many places, right? Masks and stuff. And so for me, that is kind of like a lockdown. And for me, it's shocking. 300% increase in mental issues. I mean, this is what our governments do. And Christine Anderson, the German MEP, she gave a great speech. Said like, your governments, they're out to get you. Stop like playing along. Like I think that's the key issue. Like so many people around me, the NPCs, they don't want to believe that the government is out to get them. They can't. It's like cognitive distance. Yeah. I think that's the key where they don't want to go there, because then they're going to have like a mental breakdown.
But I think it's not. But while they can ignore it, they don't have to take action. They don't have to take the action required that would would require you to dig deep into your character and push back and find out who you are and what you're made of, right? So they'd rather just pretend it's not happening, because once they do accept that it's happening, then it's a case of, okay, well, you've got to now make a choice. Are you going to remain as a slave and be a willing slave, or are you going to fight back and push back? And that's got some risks, but it's an amazing adventure that you should find out where that leads. So I think while they remain ignorant you can't wake up someone who's pretending to be asleep. And that's kind of largely what we're at. But in terms of Mexico became something of a refuge, a refuge for COVID, dissidents, didn't it? People from all over the world were traveling to Mexico. Why do you think that was the case? Why do you think Mexico, which seems to be like a global player, it's part of the system, it's not just some bit part country, it's a major player in the game, but yet it was offering refuge to people like yourself and I. And do you think that was just like an exhaust or like a pressure valve that they were saying, okay, we'll give them somewhere to go? Or do you think there was a genuine resistance within the Mexican elite for these imposed COVID regulations?
A little bit of both. There are different issues here when you say it was a valve. Because I could just see some interesting things. So one of it is, related to the North American Union thing, because I saw how Mexico had no PCR coming in, like no vaccine requirement or PCR tests, but for Canada it was insanely strict, and that actually forced migration. Many right. Canadians moved permanently to Mexico.
Yeah.
Mexicans, for economic reasons, went to U.S. So it was like a rearranging. Yeah. Of the ethnic structure, that's the goal of North American Union, supranational. That's what the EU think. So I feel like maybe they were doing that intentionally to mix things up. As we're on the road to the North American Union. On the other hand, though, what I'm going to say. A few people mentioned that the Great Reset is alive and well in Mexico, just like in all countries. I can give like a 2-hour lecture. I can tell you, I've mentioned this before, the governor of Jalisco, where I am, 500% captured globalist, got the actual white papers. We're a resilient city, which is financed by the Rockefeller Foundation. They're building out the smart city here in Richard Nichols. I'm not sure if you know him, British Mexican author. He's out in the Yucatan. He told me that the governor of Yucatan, total globalists. He didn't. I didn't go into detail, but I trust his judgment that Yucatan's governor is a globalist. Nuevo León, so it's the third biggest city of Mexico, Monterrey, which is Nuevo León. The governor, the biggest globalist, Samuel Garcia, he just went to Davos, hung out, took a photo with Klaus Schwab, invited Schwab back to Nuevo León. He said things like, "I want to eliminate all private vehicle use in Nuevo León."
I've seen.
He's bringing in the Tesla factory to Nuevo León, all this crazy stuff. So it's alive and well. But then, to what you're saying, the government in Mexico, it's not like in Europe. It's not as stable. It's a failed state in many ways. But so that gives you more freedom and gives them less ability to control. And one of the other reasons they couldn't clamp down in Mexico, because there's 120, 130 million people, a lot of people work day to day. If they tried to shut down, they'd have a revolt. So you see what I'm saying? They're going to the red lines. They're seeing how far they can go, and they're like, well, if we really mandate this stuff, people are going to go nuts. Like in Mexico City in 2020, they tried to mandate, 25 million people in Mexico City. They tried to mandate the QR codes. You couldn't enter pharmacy, supermarket, anything unless you scan the QR codes. Some other countries were successful, right? You saw that, like in Europe and elsewhere. Mexico didn't work because, again, so many people living day to day, they don't care. People just wouldn't do it. After a week, they officially said, "Okay, we're not doing the QR code thing because you guys aren't playing along," and they couldn't enforce it. So I think they're here, they're working the globalists with the governors, but again, because so many people live lower class, they can't shut it down, and it's failed. State in some ways, so they can't exert pressure like they can in other countries where governments are stronger.
Yeah, I think population control is definitely one of the motivations, because it's very difficult to control 25 million people in one city. How do you do that? How do you enforce the rules? How do you enforce your rules? Or your oppressive gulag city against 25 million people who are all going about the business, are all doing their own thing. Who's running that? And so I think there's definitely an issue with that's one of the reasons behind population control is that there's too many people to push back against them. But,
and let me give you another example. Like the emissions check for your cars. Like in the U.S. for the longest time, you've had to go once a year to do the emissions check, and that's just started now in Mexico this year. And so now they're pushing that. How long it took them to do that. So I had to, for the first time in Mexico ever, a couple weeks ago, I took it to the emissions, made the appointment. I get there, and for me it's early, it was in the afternoon, and I get there, and they're like, "Sorry, there's no electricity." Like you could in that facility, there was no electricity, so it's like I had to come back another day. Just that example of dysfunction and ineptitude. So.
Have you always been like this? The way we talk to dissidents, don't we, regularly? When we live a life like a dissident, we're opposed to slavery, we're opposed to this oppression, and we're not shy in speaking about it. But have you always been like this, or did you have a red pill? When did you become Hrvoje Moric, host of Geopolitics and Empire? Or was that something that was always in the making?
I think, people have maybe certain intrinsic, this sort of character in some ways is intrinsic, but other people can develop it and snap into it. But I do feel that I was like that, but it just took a few years to sort of become, I used to be introverted and more shy. But then learning all this stuff, it's like, over time, I just became more like a mask.
Is that the Croatian warrior in you? Is it?
Yeah. Back in the day, I would opt out at the TSA. I would, make a ruckus, with the mask stuff. So, and when I was teaching in the, in the 2000, in the late 2000s, even when I was studying in Geneva, I was making firm points against what the professors were saying. I had a professor who was I think it was Australian intelligence, and he consulted for Rockefeller Institute, and he was towing the whole official line, George Bush great, bomb Iraq, bomb the world, and then we were like having this discussion. I'm like, yeah, but George Bush is a war criminal, and he's like looking at me like, you think George Bush is a war criminal? What? Like I'm crazy? And I'm like, so and I was getting in trouble at the graduate school in Geneva for my views. So
and as I started,
and as I was teaching, I kept getting in trouble teaching. I'd have students complaining, parents complaining, got my classes taken away for 1 or 2 semesters.
What was your position? How was you unindoctrinating your students? Is that kind of how you saw it?
I was just using facts. Like it was MLK Day, and I was shocked to discover the 1999 court case of Coretta Scott King, who his wife and his entire family didn't believe, it was the lone gunman. They thought it was the government, and we actually got a verdict in the court case from 1999 that said local, state, federal, U.S. government agencies participated in the conspiracy to assassinate MLK. So that's what I'm teaching with facts, and then the kid flips out and screams to mommy, and mommy sends nasty letter to my supervisor, stuff like that. And so I'm all factual. That's how you have to be in that line of work as a teacher and professor. And that just goes to tell you, I was talking about this on the show recently, like academia completely captured wherever you go. In Mexico,
I think that's probably one of the biggest problems we've got is that as the next generation comes through the system, they have to negotiate their path through these indoctrination camps that are masquerading as centers of education, like school, college, and we have university. There is no truth, logical reason, it seems, being taught in these places anymore, and it's just to indoctrinate the next worker bee that will operate as a low-level bureaucrat in the smart cities that are going to imprison us. Was that your experience within academia?
Yeah, this is one of our biggest problems, and it's not good. The next generation is going to be even more brainwashed and indoctrinated. That's one of the keys to turning a lot of this back around. But it's not looking good because the schools, their mind control is getting bigger. I remember like 10 years ago telling students, because even a decade ago, you still had more freedom in your internet searches, and with the results, we all know that. Yeah. And now it's like nothing. It's all gone.
It's all gone.
And I was telling my students 10 years ago, it's happened. What I said, that I feel bad for the next generation. You guys are just going to go on Google. You won't have any other alternative views.
Yeah.
It's just going to be what Google says, and you won't think otherwise. And as a grad student as an undergrad student in Illinois, and then a grad student in Switzerland, and then teaching in Mexico and Kazakhstan, I can tell you from that whole experience, there's absolutely no truth in education at any level. It's all they've got limits, and then they don't let you go outside those limits, and you won't find the truth. And if you do, you're persecuted. I met Hrvoje Moric, who was one of the top geopolitics instructors in France. He was teaching the French Academy. We had coffee with him in Switzerland. He got completely blacklisted. So, like NATO and the European deep state illegally got him blacklisted. He could teach no more at any institute of any university, and he was interviewed. There was an RT clip many years ago that talked to him about it. Now I think he's in Marine Le Pen's political party working there, but that was just an example. And then I knew other professors who knew this stuff, but they wouldn't talk so much about it in class. After class, my professor would tell me go read LaRouche, go read Voltaire Network, go read all this other stuff, and they're afraid of losing their jobs.
Yeah, it's a serious problem that we've got. I mean, one thing I can take from listening to your show and listening to you, is that you talk about how almost everyone, or even everyone, or every nation state, whether they even exist anymore, but every nation state seems to be fully on board with the Great Reset and this whole new dystopian digital future that's being presented. Even Russia, who it seems like they are the bulwark against this woke empire that are trying to take over the world. But you seem to think they're on board with it too. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I posted in my Geopolitics Empire Telegram channel last night this story from, I'm just pulling it up, from AP. And it says, the title is "The Cyber Gulag, How Russia Tracks, Censors, and Controls Its Citizens. Putin has harnessed digital technology to track, censor, and control the population, building what some call a cyber gulag." A dark reference to the labor camps that held political prisoners in Soviet times. And one of my subscribers says, "What a load of Western crap this is." And it's just like, my response is, you have Stockholm syndrome, because and it's dangerous. You can't view anyone as heroes, and you can't look at this emotionally. You look in Russia. Russia's applying the same things. All countries are doing it. So how does Putin, your hero, somehow get a get out of jail free card or have diplomatic immunity? No. And what's going on is governments have outsourced. It's like you mentioned, all nations are taken over. The agents within these nations are, as I mentioned in Mexico, the governors here, the mayors, the governors, the national leaders. They're all captured by these interests. And then what's the real control structure is it's the NGOs, the consulting companies. So all of the decision making, like let's take this guy in Nuevo León, Samuel Garcia. He's outsourced his decision making to these globalists, NGOs, IGOs, international governmental organizations like UN and many of their other agencies, right? The consulting companies that work for WEF. And so all of that's been outsourced. And so you see the same thing in Russia and China. I interviewed Emmanuel Pastrik, who's for me, he did one of the best analyses of what happened with COVID. And he explained that it's basically, it was global transnational finance, all of these transnational big IT companies, private, and some of them like boutique private software companies that specialize in a lot of these QR code things and all this stuff, and private military intelligence that have penetrated all governments, and then they're assisting. It's not like the CCP is running this stuff. It's like Xi Jinping outsources this stuff, and then they give it back to him, and he applies what they're doing. And so Russia, I don't see any. Russia's doing it as well, and they've got the cyber gulag, we've got the algorithm ghetto. I'm looking at things realistically. I'm sorry, Putin is not some hero. Maybe he can't. He's one cog in the machine. Putin's not running the show. You've got a Russian deep state. You got to look at the power structure. You got the Russian military. You've got the fifth columnists. And it's like Putin's just one man in a sea. What? Even if he wants to, maybe he can't do anything.
That is like the ultimate black pill, isn't it? That they're all on board. There is, it's like almost like a learned helplessness that can overcome you if you go down that route. But that's because we are looking at this from a temporal perspective, right? And it's like, why are they really doing this? What's really going on? Why are they going to these lengths where they're making plans over 100 years that you will never see the fruition of? You'll never see the fruits of your labor over that period. You'll be long dead. What's really going on? Is it just money and power, or is there something else on the metaphysical level that is pulling these narratives together? And I know you see things from a spiritual as well as a temporal perspective, and this could be viewed as a spiritual war, and it's a war for our soul on a much higher level. And when you kind of think of it in those terms, one, it makes a bit more sense, for me at least. And two, it gives a little bit more hope in that sense, because, then it's, these temporal things that are all just part of our everyday life. Is no one gets out of here alive, do they? So how do we want to leave when we leave? Do we want to leave as people who've stood up to this evil and tyranny and slavery for a chance, at a paradise at the end, or not? But what's your view on the metaphysics that are playing out here amongst this geopolitical chess game?
Yeah, again, it goes back to my biblical Christian worldview, and prophecy for me explains a lot of this. And just kind of what you just mentioned, the Bible speaks against cowards as a sin, kind of to what you're saying. So, even if all of this has happened, it's just the people that will be thrown, go to hell will be sinners of all. That includes homosexuals, adulterers, right? People who aren't married, thieves and murderers and cowards, right? And so that kind of speaks to, the one universal principle is not being a coward and resisting evil, as we've been discussing, rebelling against this COVID stuff or any of this stuff. So that's a universal, I think, biblical Christian principle that anyone can apply, is just not being, a coward. And then it's funny, I read a meme today, kind of to what you're saying. It says, liberals want to use birth control to prevent life from forming. If it miraculously does, they want to kill a baby with abortion. If they keep the baby, they want to deform its sex organs into the opposite gender and also turn it homosexual. You can't explain this without Satan. And so, this is my view that, you just look at the prophecy. It's like all coming true. This global, it implies, Revelation and the book of Daniel, that there's going to be a global control, a world government. It's going to be totalitarian. And the way I make sense of it is, it's not humans carrying this out. There's some other higher intelligence. And for me, I literally believe in the people use Satan or Lucifer kind of as symbolically. I believe there's a real entity, this angel, bad rebel angel. And I went to I don't know if we talked about this before. I attended a meeting of the Lucis Trust, Lucifer Publishing
Tell me about
Company.
that.
So when I was in Geneva in 2009, And I knew about these guys before. So you had Alice Bailey, who founded in 1922. She was a theosophist, which is for me Satanism, occult, and she was following the tradition of Helena Blavatsky, right, from the 19th century. So she founds the Lucifer Publishing Company in 1922. They changed the name to Lucis Trust, and so they're based. They got 3 offices: New York, London, and Geneva. And you go to their website. They openly say they believe that Lucifer is Prometheus, that he is the Christ, that Lucifer is the Messiah. They literally believe it.
But
and I went to one of their meetings.
Prometheus brings technology, doesn't he? Techne, you know.
Yeah, that's why they're saying Lucifer. He's the guy who's going to bring us all the goods and help enlighten us. And I went to one of their meetings so I can, as I'm talking now, so I could have the street credibility, right? I'm not some conspiracy theorist talking about Lucifer. And I went to their meetings. I've got an actual pamphlet that talks about Prometheus and Lucifer. It says it in the pamphlet, the meeting that I attended in Geneva. And so they're an actual UN NGO. They hold consultative status on the ECOSOC with UN. So, what is it? UN is world government. What Lucifer Publishing has that, that what the Bible says, that Satan wants the one world government, and here's the UN. It's like, it's all there, it's official. And so, my view is that Satan ultimately, he's a narcissist. He wants to be God. He wants to displace God. He wants to feel what it's, that's what narcissists like. They want that adoration, adulation, right? They want that glory. And I think that's what he's attempting to do, is take control of the planet, and then wants to force the whole world to worship him. And he's copying God at every level, God being omniscient, omnipresent. That's why he's building out a global surveillance state that's going to monitor us. And so, like, that's what this is all about. And so that gets to that higher metaphysical reason for. And then, he hates humanity. He hates man. So he wants to kill and destroy as much as possible in any way possible. Wars. A lot of this Great Reset stuff that we're seeing. The wars, the famines, the impoverishment through inflation, and all of this, the disease, biowarfare, potentially nuclear war. So any which way he can get at us. For me, that kind of explains this. It's a hatred for humanity. That kind of explains, everything. It helps you make sense of it, and it makes you feel better because, if this is true, then this is the conclusion I came to when I read the Bible. Well, if all this prophecy stuff and what Jesus and all these other people talk about is true, wait, then the other part must be true, that the only way to be saved is to believe in Jesus, right? That's kind of that's that second jump where some people don't want to go there in the alternative media, but that's my conclusion. The safety raft is the ark, believing in Christ. That's how as they said, the basic instructions before leaving Earth, Bible, right? And so that's like my life raft, where I can then look at all of this stuff that we're talking about and what's going on in a more relaxed manner. Because, from my perspective, I've got my parachute. And so it's a black pilling on the material level, as we discussed, but on the metaphysical or eternal or spiritual, I've got my parachute, so I'm good to go. That's how I can look at this stuff, as nasty as it is, and look at it profoundly and not flip out. Whereas if other, I think maybe that's why some people look to Putin or multipolarity as their saviors, because that's their, everyone needs this sort of sense of security, something that's going to get them out of the situation, right?
But you can understand why they want to crush spiritual faith in Christ and promote atheism, because that really is the black pill, isn't it? That's the ultimate black pill, right? Which is, once you're gone, man. You're going into the dust, and that's it. So make the most of what you can while you're here. Steal as much as you can. Break all the rules as much as you can, because there's nothing beyond here, right? So that really works for, like you say, Satan's plan, right? Because if you had faith in Christ or in the next realm, then you're going to be focused on more on achieving those goals rather than worrying too much about your problems in the temporal realm. And I think that it's something that is a really good spiritual solution, is to remember that, there's more to come after this. That's what I believe anyway. Yeah. But I think it really does help to understand what's going on. I think you can make sense of it. Otherwise, it just seems so ridiculous or so absurd. There are things that are happening that don't make any sense at all, but you can rationalize them. So if you think that what's being played out now is the book of Revelation, what comes after the book of Revelation?
Well, I mean, that's the end. The traditional view is, I think time only exists, history and time exist only because of sin, right? Mm-hmm. But once, Christ comes back and makes everything new, there's going to be everything's going to be, there's going to be eternity. There's not going to be any time anymore. It'll be effectively, it'll be the real end of history. So, I mean, basically, and I don't know when this is happen. I've interviewed like Pastor Pulowski. I've interviewed different good, Christian pastors. Patrick Wood of Technocracy, who's a Christian, he says the same things, that it could be now. I just view it as a progressive buildup. Yeah. You could, it's just a cycle. Alex Thompson of UK Column, who's also a Christian, and was talking about this. It's the same principles over and over throughout history. The mark of the beast, the push towards a global system. But it takes a long time for the devil to do this. You go back to the Roman Empire, that was one of the attempts. All the different empires, they just progressively grow, and then they collapse, and then they come back again even bigger, and then they collapse, and then that just keeps going on and on until he gets the whole planet, and then it collapses as Christ comes back. And then in the Roman Empire, you had like these sort of like COVID-like certificates. They forced citizens of the Roman Empire. I was shocked to discover this during COVID, that you had to have this pagan certificate that you sacrificed an animal to a pagan god, and if you didn't have that certificate, you could be fined or jailed or possibly killed. And then you go to the Middle Ages under the Holy Roman Empire. The Catholic Church forced you to have. I actually found a primary source that said if you didn't believe in all of the precepts of the Catholic Church, you would not be able to buy or sell. Literally.
Indulgences.
And and then the Catholic Church killed, how many, some people say millions of, tens of millions of people who didn't do what they say. And then, the Nazi Germany, they had the health passes. And so each time it's like a cycle, but it just gets bigger and bigger and more successful. And so, and I would wager those were like early iterations of the mark of the beast system. And people living at those times, basically, that they were martyred or killed for not abiding by whatever the state said. And sometimes it didn't even have to be explicitly Christian. Bow down to the emperor. No. Okay, off with his head. So I think we're progressing towards that. I might very well be the 2030s. This is interesting because, and I'm not the only one, because there have other people independently have been starting to come to this conclusion. Because if you believe the Earth is 6,000 years since creation, and Christ died around 33 AD, give or take, it might be according to the historical record, then 2033, right? Give or take. No one knows the exact year. Christ might say, come back 2031, 2034, 2038 or something. But that would be 2,000. That will fulfill the 2,000 years since Christ, and 6,000 years, which, symbolically is like the 6 days. And then the seventh day is like the rest, or, 7,000th year would be the millennium. And so there's also a logic to that. And that would also kind of help explain their obsession with 2030. And so, I mean, there's a lot of stuff here, but yeah.
Well, we know how important numerology is to them. We know how important dates and numbers, and we see them everywhere, and we see all these symbols of these crazy numbers that we can you can't deny once you start looking at them. So yeah, they seem to have this reverence for certain numbers and sequences and equations and formulas, and we can only speculate on that, or maybe we don't need to speculate. Maybe it's already written in Revelation. So yeah, I think that's a good point to end part one, is Jesus's return. That's a good way to end this kind of conversation. But people watching this may want to make their time they've got left here a little bit more interesting, exciting, and comfortable, or want to avoid the digital gulags. And I don't blame anyone for wanting to avoid them. So I think in part 2, for people who want to come over and become members of my site and watch part 2, we're going to talk about the solutions, about what you can do, about how you can resist, where you can go, the thought processes that you can practice. So we're going to do that over in part 2. But before we do, for people who are just going to hang around for part 1, where can people find you, Hrvoje? Because I know you've got Geopolitics and Empire, but you've also got TNT. So if people want to pursue your content, tell us where we can find it.
Yeah, just geopoliticsandempire.com is the HQ. I don't have the paywall model, but my podcasts are free. But I really need donations. I do have a membership, which is $5 a month. I've been really lazy on that, but I'm going to get back to that, where I do monthly Zoom calls just to chat with members about anything, and then I got to get back to doing like once a week audio, just of my thoughts, to publishing for members only, and the private like chat or TNTRadio.live. I'm very active on my Geopolitics and Empire Twitter account, which is growing, and my Telegram as well, 12,000 plus, and I'm often there in the chat as well, TNTRadio.live, and those are the places that I'm most active. Always happy to hear from people.
Cool. I'll put all those links in the description as usual. It's been great chatting to you about this. I've been looking forward to speaking to you. But I'm going to, go over to part 2 now, where we go a little bit deeper and we'll talk about solutions. So thanks everyone for tuning in for part 1. I hope to see you all in part 2.